So, Gad, you're in the New York Post.
Indeed, I am. Yes.
Why are porn stars dying? And it has you here. Behavioral scientist Gad sat a chair at John Molson School of Business, Montreal. And it has you quoted as saying, the problem is that the work dries up, the phone stops ringing, and they say, now what? Porn stars aren't the best at making a what-if plan for the future.
Yeah. Frankly, I don't remember. I should have taped my conversation with the reporter because that doesn't sound like a direct quote of mine. But what I tried to explain to her is that I had written an article on my Psychology Today column where I summarized another study that had been done, not by me, back in 2013, where they actually tested the damaged good hypothesis, the idea that women who go into porn are necessarily damaged, and that's why ultimately they choose porn as a career. And the research, surprising to I think most people, did not find that. So that was the focus of our conversation.
Have you ever heard the discovery, I guess you'd call it, that says when people are confronted with data that contradicts their beliefs, they become more steadfast in their beliefs?
Yes, it's very true. And actually, I made the point to her that that's why it's important, and certainly in the behavioral sciences, to test what's called folk psychology, right? Folk psychology are the beliefs that we all hold about how the world should work. Oftentimes, those beliefs are correct, whereas in many cases, our folk psychology proves to be incorrect. And so I think this is an example where if you asked 100 people, do you think that the damaged good hypothesis will bear out? And most would say yes, but the data didn't show this. But I should mention, I had also interviewed an actual former male adult performer who went by the name of Dave Pounder, no less. And actually our chat is published on my Psychology Today column. And he said that anecdotally, based on his experience, he was very surprised that the damaged good hypothesis did not hold.
Well, I bring up the more steadfast because I'm one of those people, and I am experiencing folk psychology right now. When confronted with your article in Psychology Today that denies they're damaged goods, I became more steadfast in my belief that they're damaged goods. Now, here's my theory.
Right.
Women genetically have a trait where the glass is always half full. And they have that trait, so when a kid shows them a crappy drawing, they go, that's wonderful, it looks just like a tiger. They're always positive because they're meant to be moms. We just go, that's not a tiger, and throw it away. So these women, every time you look up a study like, is it fun being a single mom? Or is it okay that your ovaries dried up? Or do you like working like a slave? Inevitably they say, yeah, it's fun, moms rock, and being a single mom rocks, because they're always looking on the bright side. So I think these women are damaged goods. I think they are the victims of sexual abuse to a wildly disproportionate number, but when they're in an interview, they hate that stereotype. So when they're being studied, they say, actually, no. And you know what else? I'm happy. I love my life. I'm having a great time. And it's a myth.
Well, I mean, what you're saying is actually part of a more general phenomenon of cognitive dissonance, right?
Yes.
If a girl that I loved leaves me and I now have to face the reality that she's left me, I will reevaluate her qualities and faults so that her having left me sounds so much better to me now, right?
Yes.
And so what you're arguing basically is that it doesn't make sense for most people to go, and certainly for most women, to choose this as a career path. And now when faced with having to justify it, they have to put a brave front. Is that
Yes.
what you're saying?
Look at it with fatness. You go up to a fat guy and you grab his belly if he's a friend of yours and you go, you're a fat pig. And he goes, I know, what am I doing? This is getting ridiculous. You'd never say that to a woman in a million years, but you look at a fat pig who's a woman and she'll be like, I am beautiful, hear me roar, I love my plus size body, I'm a model.
It's funny that you say this because in one of my books, I talk about the fat acceptance movement. And I specifically refer to a movement, or I can't remember if it was a book, where they took the sort of the pejorative term fatso and they put a fat exclamation point, so question mark.
Oh, God.
So what if I'm fat?
You're dying.
If men don't, actually, they argue that it is incorrect to draw a link between obesity and all of these downstream health, ill consequences. It's part of the pathologizing of obesity, and it's incorrect. So it's really very much of an ostrich strategy where you put your head in the sand and hope that the problem goes away.
I mean, I've talked to comedians who would write jokes for the Vivid Awards, I believe it's called, the porn awards. And every time you made it, even the slightest allusion to child molestation or being diddled or whatever, the room just goes shumph. Like
Right.
it's like you just showed a dead body on stage. Everyone is immediately silenced because they all have it. Even like this woman, August Ames, in the article, they say that, oh, she was mad because she was being bullied online. I've spoken to porn stars in the industry. She was raped by her father repeatedly, had crazy daddy issues, was a drug addict. That's another thing, too. They do cocaine, and cocaine has such ups and downs that
Right.
when they hit a down, they hit a wham.
Well, the study in question, by the way, the one that didn't support the damaged good hypothesis, did find that when it comes to substance abuse,
Yes.
porn stars did consume it more than non-porn ladies. And so to that extent, you're exactly right.
Yeah. So where do you stand? Do you think, what percentage does your gut tell you, and this is not science, what percentage does your gut tell you women in the porn industry have been sexually molested?
I can't give you a number. I think it's obviously there must be some, but I also, not to sound like a feminist guy, but I do think, look, I think we both spoke to Mercedes Carrera, right?
Yep.
Right. Now, she will tell you that no, look, she's a very strong woman who doesn't have, negative patches in her past, but she's taken it upon herself to do this for very pragmatic reasons. So I can't give you the exact number, but my feeling is that there truly are women who went down this path because they suffered horrible realities in their past. But I do think there are other women who decide, look, I could do a couple of scenes per month and make a lot more than I could working as a office assistant, and they do this pragmatically, and yet they had a wonderful childhood. So I think it's a bit of both. It's difficult
I think
to
those
say.
ones you're talking about don't last. They do it for a year and they go, this is ruining sex for me. It's making me hate men. I'm not doing it. My gut says anyone who does it for any duration of time, 85%. And Mercedes is an exception. She'll admit that she's autistic. Mercedes Carrera stubs her toe. She'll go, that is extremely painful, like when an ant stubs his toe. Her foot works less good for the next 5 steps. So
Right.
she's able to have sex without emotion because she's not an emotional person. I think she's almost Asperger's-y. She told me as much. I mean, I'm being hyperbolic, but she did say she has autistic tendencies. I mean, she worked in a lab before this. She's a nerd,
Right, yeah.
despite being incredibly hot. So
She is beautiful.
I think the majority of these girls are suffering. They do coke to feel better. Coke gives you lows. And I think this whole 5 deaths in 7 months is a great argument for traditionalism.
Right. I mean, sure. But by the way, I should just mention as a side note, I received on my public Facebook page in the visitor post section this unbelievable message from a woman who somehow decided that based on whatever quotes were offered of me in that New York Post article, that I'm sort of the grand wizard of pornography, and then said that of course you are that, because after all you are, and now in capital letters,
Jew.
a kike.
Oh.
And when they do come back for you, and I know they will, to blow your brains in the ditch, don't turn to me and whine when they execute you and the rest of your family. So this is the world that I live in, Gavin.
Yes, I've received a few of those too. But just sometimes it's fun to try to figure out what the hell they're talking about. Is she talking about the imminent Fourth Reich when the Gestapo comes? Who's going to be killing you?
Yeah, I'm not sure who it is, because there's a long queue of Jew haters that send me loving messages of tolerance and peace. So maybe it's the Fourth Reich, maybe it's the Islamists. I don't know who she meant, but apparently they're coming for me, and I better hide real quickly.
Well, I think we can all agree that we will not be calling her, begging her for help, if that day ever comes.
Right.
All right, Gab. Well, thanks for clearing it up. It's an interesting scientific study, and it's also a brutal tragedy.
It is indeed. My pleasure, Gavin. Anytime.
Thanks, buddy.